The all-you-can-eat buffet should not exist. You pay one flat price, you eat as much as you physically can, and somehow the restaurant still walks away with a profit. On paper, a single hungry customer could eat the entire day's earnings. So how does the buffet win almost every single time? And why, despite winning, are they quietly dying all across America? Economists actually have a name for why the buffet should fail. They call it adverse selection. You know exactly how hungry you are. The restaurant does not. In theory, that hidden knowledge should let customers drain the place dry, one loaded plate at a time. And yet, for the better part of a century, the buffet did not just survive, it conquered. The reason is that a buffet is not really a restaurant at all. It is a carefully engineered psychology experiment with a cash register at the door. To understand how it wins, you have to see the buffet for what it truly is: a machine built to fill your stomach as cheaply as humanly possible. And it starts the very second you pick up a plate. Walk in, and the first trays you reach are, almost without exception, the cheapest food in the building. Salad, bread, pasta, rice, potatoes. This is not laziness or coincidence. It is deliberate design. In observational studies, roughly 75% of customers put whatever sits in that first tray directly onto their plate. And about 66% of everything they end up eating comes from those first few trays. By the time you finally reach the expensive meat at the far end, your plate is already crowded and your appetite is already fading. And the economics behind those trays are almost comically lopsided. A single serving of potatoes costs the restaurant somewhere around 30 cents. A serving of steak costs closer to $2.25. That is why the cheap starches greet you at the door, piled high, while the good stuff hides in the back. The buffet is quietly begging you to fill up on the 30-cent food before you ever get near the $2 food. The layout keeps nudging you long after that first plate. The plates themselves are small, so you take less on every trip and feel full faster. The cheap food sits in enormous pans filled right to the brim, practically daring you to take a giant scoop, while the expensive meat sits in shallow, half-empty trays that quietly whisper, "Take a little." You are handed a big ladle for the rice and a pair of tiny tongs for the meat. And since nobody wants to hold up the line, fumbling one slice at a time, you move on quickly. Even the drink glasses are huge, because water is nearly free, and a full glass of it fills your stomach at almost no cost to the house. Then there is the psychology of variety. Researchers have long known about something called sensory-specific satiety. The more flavors and textures on offer, the more you tend to eat, because your palate keeps getting bored and then refreshed. That sounds like a disaster for the buffet, but it actually cuts both ways. Faced with 50 options, most people graze a little of everything and tire quickly, rather than demolishing plate after plate of one expensive dish. And the true monster eater, the legend who actually beats the buffet, is far rarer than you think. Only about 1 in every 20 customers. He is easily paid for by the other 19, who eat an average amount or, more often, quite a bit less. Bring a big family or a group of coworkers, and the heavy eaters and the light eaters simply cancel each other out. Behind the kitchen doors, the savings get even bigger. Buffets buy in bulk, where a 50-pound sack of potatoes might cost only a few dollars. They practice what one chef called trickle-down specials, turning yesterday's leftover vegetables and beef trimmings into today's soup or hash, so almost nothing is wasted. And because the food is prepped in giant batches instead of made to order, a single buffet cook can prepare enough food for around 200 people in the time a normal restaurant cook would serve just 25. Self-service means there are almost no waiters to pay. The entire operation is engineered to strip out cost at every single step. But here is the first real secret, and it surprises almost everyone. On the food itself, a buffet barely makes a cent. For every $20 that walks in the door, as much as 19 can go straight back out to food, labor, and rent, leaving a razor-thin profit of about $1. The buffet essentially breaks even on the feast. So where does the actual money come from? Look down at the cup in your hand. A soft drink costs the restaurant around 12 cents to serve. They sell it to you for $2.50, sometimes more. That is a markup of roughly 1,500% and a profit margin close to 90%. The food is the bait, the drink is the business. It is no accident that so many buffets quietly stopped including drinks in the ticket price. Which brings us right back to that economic puzzle, adverse selection. The reason it fails to kill the buffet is simple. Because the food is bought in bulk and cooked en masse, a plate of buffet food costs the restaurant a fraction of what the same meal would cost cooked to order. So even a customer who feels like they are getting away with a steal is very often still eating a perfectly profitable amount. You feel like you won. The house still wins. And that idea, feeling like you won while the house quietly wins, is not a coincidence at all. It is the entire reason the buffet was invented in the first place. Rewind to post-war America. Thanks to a quiet revolution in farming, United States food production nearly tripled between the late 1940s and today. The country was practically drowning in cheap surplus food, and someone had to figure out what to do with all of it. The answer, it turned out, was to pile it high and sell the spectacle of abundance itself. Nowhere did that idea land harder than in Las Vegas. In 1946, the El Rancho Vegas, one of the very first resorts on what would become the Strip, launched the city's first casino buffet, a late-night spread of cold cuts and simple hot dishes for about $1. And here is the crucial part. At $1, that buffet almost certainly lost money. It was never meant to turn a profit. It was bait. Fill a gambler with cheap prime rib in the middle of the night and he never has to leave the building, and he gets back to the tables far faster than if he sat down for a proper meal. The buffet was a loss leader, an advertising expense with a salad bar, and the house made its fortune not on the food, but on the full-bellied gamblers it kept parked at the slot machines. The idea worked so well that casino after casino copied it. And from there, it spread across the entire country to chains like Golden Corral and Ponderosa. For decades, the machine hummed along beautifully. And then, the ground underneath it shifted in two devastating ways. First, the economics of Las Vegas itself flipped completely. Up until the 1980s, gambling made up around 75% of a casino's revenue. So cheap buffet bait made perfect sense. But today, casinos earn about 75% of their money from dining, shows, and hotels, and only around 25% from gambling. The math inverted. Suddenly, the cheap buffet was not a clever lure anymore. It was a costly liability, sitting on prime real estate that a celebrity chef restaurant could fill with high-paying customers. Why lose money luring gamblers when the fancy restaurant next door has quietly become the profit center itself? Then, the pandemic delivered the knockout blow. A business model built on crowds of strangers sharing serving spoons over open trays of food was, almost overnight, the single last place on earth anyone wanted to be. In 2020, Souplantation and Sweet Tomatoes, a beloved chain that had started back in 1978, permanently closed all 97 of its locations at once, wiping out more than 4,000 jobs. Golden Corral, the giant of the entire industry, shrank from around 490 restaurants to roughly 300. In Las Vegas, the self-styled buffet capital of America, fewer than 15 buffets remain today. An $8 billion national institution was gutted almost overnight, and rising food costs, labor shortages, and a growing taste for quality over sheer quantity made sure it never fully bounced back. But the buffet is not quite dead. It is mutating. Walk into Caesar's Palace today, and you will find the Bacchanal Buffet with more than 250 dishes, where dinner can easily run past $100 a person. That is the future of the format. No longer cheap bait to keep you gambling, but an expensive experience you now travel for on purpose. The loss leader has become the main event, and that is the whole strange life story of the all-you-can-eat buffet. It only ever worked on paper-thin margins at enormous volume, using cheap food and even cheaper trust. It was never really about the feast in front of you. It was a machine for turning surplus into spectacle, or bait for a much bigger bet. And the moment the volume stops, or the trust breaks, there is almost nothing underneath to hold it up. So the next time you walk past that endless glowing spread, remember what you are actually looking at. Not a generous deal, and not a mistake in the restaurant's favor, but a finely tuned experiment in human appetite, where the cheapest thing on the entire table is the food, and you, quietly, were always meant to be the product. If you enjoyed pulling back the curtain on the business behind your food, subscribe, because there is a hidden economy inside everything you eat.